Elon Musk saying your name right now. Why you not responding? Listen, right now, in a world crowded with noise and anonymous notifications, there's a single moment happening that almost nobody will see. You've been called in a way that most people only dream about, but you're here, and whether you realize it yet or not, that's not an accident. Right now, right this second, your name is being spoken. Not lost in the crowd, not echoing out to everyone, but aimed straight at you, darting through all the randomness and routine directly into your ear. Do you feel it? That pull, like someone suddenly switched on a spotlight and your name is at the center? Don't shrug it off. Not today. Because life doesn't call us by name just for the show. Your name, out of millions, is catching the attention of the person who defines what it means to grab the future, Elon Musk. Imagine that for a second. Imagine the wildest innovator alive, pausing his day and speaking your name with purpose. Not by mistake. Not because you're ordinary. But because some thread you've carried, some hunger, some force you haven't even fully admitted to yourself yet, matches the exact note he's been listening for. Why isn't anyone else responding? Maybe because most people think opportunities only come with permission, or fanfare, or a big flashing sign. But the truth is, when you feel your name being called where you least expect it, that's when something big wants to shift. Right now, that shift wants to happen through you. But I have to ask. Why are you still silent? What are you waiting for? Why not answer? Because, believe me, this isn't a routine message. This is the moment that decides whether the next chapter of your life is another page in somebody else's book, or the clean beginning of your own. Your name is hanging in the air. If you don't claim it, nobody else ever will. Let's slow everything down for a second. Breathe in. Feel your chest rising, not just from oxygen, but from possibility. There is a pulse, right here, right now, that only you can hear. The world is full of people who want to be seen. Who want to stand out but are terrified of stepping up when the moment actually finds them. It's easy to dream, it's harder to respond. To act. To say, yes, I hear my name, and I'm coming. Most people will never know how close they came to extraordinary, simply because they mistook it for coincidence or background noise. Let your mind wander for a heartbeat. Elon Musk. Love him, hate him, debate him all day, what you can't do is ignore the reality that he's one of the only people alive who refuses to shrink when his name is called in the arena. Every headline. Every risk. It's not just random luck. It's a signal, tuned to those who answer back, even if their voice shakes, even if they feel like an imposter some days. That's the frame the world forgets. It's never about being most prepared, or the most certain. It's always about who shows up and answers when the challenge looks impossible, or even a little bit crazy. You might be thinking, why now? Why me? That's the question every extraordinary person has asked right before everything changed. The crowd never answers. The crowd hopes someone else will take the first step. But you're still here. You're not scrolling away, you're not talking yourself out of it. That says all it needs to. Pause right here. Think about the story of your name. Not the one your friends use. Not your email address or your tags online. The one that holds the secret blueprint of who you really are, and the things you haven't admitted to wanting. The adventures you dream about just before sleep, or the ideas that visit you only when everything else falls quiet. That name, the real one, is the one being called out right now. And Musk, whether you believe in luck, destiny, algorithms or accident, is speaking it. Not because he needs anything from you, but because the world's future depends on a few more people waking up and daring to act as if their name actually matters. Because it does. Because yours does, right now. So, you find yourself at a door that nobody else sees. Will you answer? Will you let this slide by and turn into another story about what could have happened if you'd only responded when you felt the pull? History is overflowing with people who almost heard their name, who almost answered the call, who almost woke up. Almost never changes anything. Action does. Let that fill you up for a second. You might think, what could possibly change if I respond? I'm not famous. I don't have resources, talent, time, certainty, but you don't need to be ready. Nobody's ever ready. Not for the big stuff. Not for the kind of change that calls you out by name. You think Musk was ready to be the guy who failed and got mocked? Who risked everything and sometimes lost huge? He responded anyway. That's what made him inevitable. Right now, you have a strange, gifted chance to test drive what a bold answer sounds like, just for yourself. Nobody's watching. There's no leaderboard or applause. Just the secret code carried by the very best stories. Someone hears their name, and they answer before their courage dies. Let's pause again. The world is busy shouting. Busy performing. Busy waiting for confirmation. But destiny doesn't use megaphones. It whispers. It calls out softly, barely above the static. Most people miss it completely. Lucky for you, your name's being spoken loud enough that you can hear it, right now, above everything else. So, are you really not going to respond? Or are you ready to see what your own answer unlocks? Breathe. The next move is all yours. Still here. Good. That says more about you than a dozen online quizzes or 1,000 empty social posts ever could. Because let's be honest, it's easy to pretend we're ready to be called. Most people say they want their name spoken by something larger than themselves, but when the moment finally arrives, when the world pauses and an open door appears, they freeze. They rationalize. They disconnect. They give their dream a polite wave and retreat back into the safe shadows. But you're leaning in, closer than before. Why? Because you can feel the pressure in the silence between your thoughts. And maybe you're starting to sense that for all the times you felt invisible, or left behind, or unsure if life was ever going to look the way you hoped it would, this is precisely the kind of moment that people pray for. Not a lightning bolt from above, but that subtle, trembling certainty that it's your move now. Let's breathe together for a heartbeat. There's something beautiful, and a little bit terrifying, about having your name on the line. Responsibility grows in these moments. So does possibility. That's the real secret. Not everyone can handle the weight of being seen. Musk can, but not because he's bigger than fear. He just decided, again and again, that action matters more than anxiety. At every major crossroads, when his name was called, on stage, in the press, by his own midnight doubts, he responded. Even when his voice shook. Especially then. What would your response look like if you didn't edit yourself for anyone else? If you didn't shrink from your own longing, or stumble over what's reasonable? Life will always try to shrink you down to the safe version of yourself. The version that survives, but never shakes the room. Musk's whole philosophy? Make the move that leaves no room for regret. Not for applause. For the quiet conviction that you answered when it was your name on the line. Pause right there. Think about all the times you watched opportunities drift by other people. You told yourself, I'm not like them. That's not true. You are. We all are. The only real difference is that most people let the moment expire. That window, open for just a blink, closes quietly behind routine, comfort, and hesitation. But the rare few learn to override the noise. They train themselves to listen for their name, especially when it seems outlandish, unlikely, impossible. Let this sink in. If you're still here, it means you've got the beginnings of that rarest trait, the habit of showing up for your own story. Because everything you want lives right on the other side of responding. All those inventions, those careers, those relationships, those adventures you envy in other people's feeds. They started with a name being called, and someone, often unsure, said, I'll show up for this. Not because it was logical. Because something in them wouldn't let go of the call. So how do you actually respond when Musk, or life itself, says your name? Not with a perfect pitch or a superhero's certainty. You respond with a tiny step. A message sent. A project begun. A decision made, even when your hands are shaking. You prove you were paying attention the exact moment the universe asked, are you ready to stop hiding? Ready or not, you step forward. Let's pause. You may feel unqualified, underprepared, unnoticed. But if your name is being called, that means something in you is already enough. That doesn't mean you won't have to grow, or risk, or stretch. It just means you start with willingness, and let the rest catch up. Think about Musk again for a moment. How many times did he step onto an unfamiliar stage, speak up for an idea people thought was madness, keep going after doors slammed in his face? Those, yes, moments weren't delivered with certainty, they came with open hands and a willingness to build the bridge while walking across it. Breathe into that. What if you gave yourself permission to be a beginner right in the middle of your destiny? What if the response wasn't about having everything mapped out, but about making the first move, and letting the plan build itself in real time? The myth is that you need to know the whole journey before you start. The truth? The journey never even starts for those who wait for clarity. A lot of people get addicted to feeling called, but never act on it. The only call that matters is the one you answer. Don't idolize the idea of a calling and lose the actual moment. Right now, you're the one holding the phone, hearing your name on the line, and deciding if this is the moment you learn what you're really made of. So why are you not responding? Fear. Doubt. Habit. 1,000 little defenses that are so familiar you mistake them for safety. The world is engineered to keep you asleep. But every so often, something comes along disruptive enough to whisper, wake up. Now is when the future is built. That's this. That's you. Let's slow down. Maybe your answer today is just deciding to stay uncomfortable for a little longer. To say, yes, I see what's possible. Yes, I'm afraid. Yes, I'll try anyway. Maybe it's daring to care out loud, or putting down the lie that says you don't matter, that your name will just blend into the wallpaper of history. You are here. You are listening. And fate, life, Musk, whatever you want to call it, doesn't call you without purpose. The moment lasts as long as your courage does. What if the smallest whisper of, I'm here, I'm ready, is all it takes for the story to tilt in your favor? Breathe, and answer however you can, before the window closes. There's a quiet test happening beneath every ordinary day, you just rarely notice until your name is echoing somewhere in the static. And that test is this: when the world whispers for you to step forward, will you trust the pull or listen to your old story? Will you sit silent, or will you show up, even if your hands shake and your heart is pounding? Musk didn't invent courage. He just decided to make it his default setting. Every crash, every cold shoulder, every impossible stamped across his plans, he pushed through by answering back. One risk at a time. One statement to the world, I'm not done yet. The noise outside? It never goes away. It just gets quieter every time you act, every time you move, every time you let your own voice be louder than your excuses. Let's breathe. Too many people wait for an invitation with gold leaf and a velvet rope, with applause at the ready and everyone's blessing in hand. That's not how real calls work. Real calls show up on Mondays as much as on stage lights. Some of the most powerful ones are disguised as boredom, as discomfort, as that low-grade longing you try to silence with more scrolling. The feeling that you could be so much more, if you'd only dare to interrupt your usual story. You might think responding means selling everything, moving continents, or declaring something on a mountaintop. Sometimes the biggest yes is saying no to what drains you instead. Rejecting what makes your name smaller, not bigger. Maybe you respond by finally leaving behind the approval that doesn't fill you. Maybe it's enrolling in that course, picking up the call, or finally responding to the spark you've ignored for years. It's rarely flashy. It's just brave. Let's pause. If nobody's taught you, courage is the willingness to risk embarrassment for the possibility of growth. To answer your own longing, even before the world validates it. Musk is relentlessly public, but the audiences are often online, and the first person he had to convince was himself. That's always true. The outside world is never first respondent. You are. Why do so many people not answer when life says their name? Because not responding is safer, at least at first. The problem? The bill for inaction always arrives late, and it's always more expensive than you think. Regret doesn't knock. It just moves in quietly, unpacking all the maybe next times and what ifs you thought you could store forever. Breathe into that. This is the secret your heroes never post about. The world you want begins the moment you show up for yourself, not later, not someday, but right in the raw edge where comfort ends and possibility begins. Yes, other people may not understand. Yes, you might stumble. Yes, you'll be unsure. But tell me, who do you think does anything remarkable and never feels this confusion? You can answer right now, in your own way. Not by shouting, but by finally making a move. Write it down. Say it out loud. Take the smallest step you can manage and let the momentum of that response break the spell that comfort keeps you under. Let's really pause. Imagine this whole script is Musk himself, pausing between launches to just look you in the eye and say your name. Imagine the hush, the sense that right now, against all odds, the universe, history, and momentum collided to bring focus to you. One moment, one name, one path split in front of you. How you answer is the invisible fork in the road. Most people will never notice their call. They won't hear their name, or they'll get too busy arguing with their inner critic to recognize it. That's why days repeat. Why dreams stall. But you, still here, still alert, still breathing into the possible, you've got something most will never understand. The courage to dwell in the discomfort of being chosen. Of being called. Of being asked to do more, be more, risk more. It's not about ego. It's about refusing to let your story shrink into the background. Let's be honest. Courage doesn't come after you feel ready. It comes the second you stop apologizing for trying. Yes, there are people who will never support your move. Yes, some will laugh or doubt or project their own fears on your next step. But the few who change the terms of their lives? They're the ones who hear their name and respond, even if they have to do it alone. So here's your test. Imagine your future self, looking back at this moment. Will you regret saying yes and trying something new, or will you regret letting it slide one more time? 10 years from now, what would your answer look like? What choice would make that person proud? Breathe again. Write it, record it, whisper it. But do something. Because this is not another piece of noise on your endless feed. This is a message that knows your name, and is daring you to answer before comfort puts you back to sleep for another season. You can worry that you're not Musk-level material. That's a myth. Reputations are built one move at a time, and you start exactly as unqualified, shaky, and unproven as everyone else who was ever called to something bigger. You don't need certainty. You need movement. Why are you not responding? The real reason is always fear, or the lie that you're not worth the disturbance. But what if the universe is waiting for your response to unlock its next move? What if you're the variable the future depends on? The world is built by those who answer, even with trembling hands. Pause. This is your third time at the crossroads in this script. That's not random. That's how real change happens, by circling the moment of decision until you finally break your own spell of inaction. Don't let this be another loop in your old pattern. Close the gap. Send your answer. Say your yes. Even if it's a whisper, it's enough for the future to begin. Right now, as your eyes roll along these words, history is soft and flexible in your hands. The world's not finished yet. Musk isn't done dreaming, building, failing, trying again. The game is still wide open for those bold enough to hear their name and finally, choose to answer. That's what these last moments are about. If you're still here, it's not habit. It's not boredom. Something inside you wants more. You stayed, you listened, you felt every question and every challenge. You know deep down, ordinary is a decision, just like extraordinary is a decision. Which will you let call the shots now? Exhale with me, just for a beat. Because underneath all the talk of invention, success, and reputation, there's one lesson hiding. If you don't answer your name, you let someone else write your story. Musk never expected the world's permission. He heard his name, even when it sounded like failure or ridicule, and he answered anyway. The greatest disruption he ever pulled off? Replacing silence with action. What does your own yes look like? Sometimes it's complicated, but often it's beautifully simple. Maybe your answer today is reaching out to someone you've avoided for too long. Maybe it's applying for that role, sending that email, starting that savings plan, booking that solo trip, publishing your messy first draft, or finally admitting the life you've settled for just isn't it. Every yes is a vote for your future self. Every silence is a way of letting who you were decide who you'll always be. Let's slow the world down. See, there's a myth that the next step will always feel good, or certain, or easy. That it will arrive labeled safe. But every extraordinary person you've ever admired answered despite the uncertainty, despite the discomfort. And over time, do you know what happens? Their courage compounds. Their steps, even their missteps, become the road under their feet. The cost of not answering? You rarely feel it right away. It accumulates quietly. Unused ideas become regret. Unexpressed creativity becomes restlessness. The unspoken yes hardens into a habit of hesitation. One day you realize the window isn't just closed, it's gone. But it never had to end that way. Not if, today, you claim your spot in your own narrative. Let's sit with that for a moment. What would it mean, for your future, your friends, the people you care about, if you finally let yourself believe your name was worth answering to? Not waiting for better timing. Not hoping for an easier path. But moving, choosing, risking, with exactly what you already have, and what you already are. Every single move builds evidence for your belief in yourself. The world answers to people who first answered themselves. That is what Musk figured out, that is what destiny always requires. The trick is that courage isn't the absence of fear or doubt, it's your decision to answer before either can talk you out of it. So as we approach the end of this message that's been circling your spirit, saying your name quietly but persistently, just imagine, what if your yes started a ripple that outlived all your old hesitations? What if today's risk proved to be the moment all your waiting finally tipped toward becoming? You don't need anyone's permission. Not now. Not ever. Your name, your one-of-a-kind way of moving through the world, was noticed for a reason. Right now is a second chance to prove to yourself the future's not closed. There are people who won't understand, who won't clap, or support, or even notice you step out of your old lane. That doesn't matter. That was never the point. The universe doesn't need mass approval to move. It just needs a single answer from the one person holding the pen to their own next chapter. Let's pause, truly pause, before the last words. Think of a real response you could make in the next hour. Not a fantasy. Not a wish. An actual action, even if tiny, that signals you're done letting your name slip silently past the gates of greatness. It doesn't have to be neat or impressive. Send it anyway. You'll surprise yourself, the future always rewards the bravest step, not the perfect one. You don't have to be the next Musk. You don't have to go to Mars. But you do, right now, have the rare choice to say, my name was called, and I didn't go silent. I answered. I changed direction. And the line of my life will never look exactly the same because of it. This script, these words, they can't force anything to happen. The choice is quietly yours, whether you tell anyone else or not. But the cost of not responding has always been higher than anyone will admit. Regret has an endless appetite. But wonder can be created with a single answer. With a whisper of action when the world least expects it. So let's mark the moment. The last words. You aren't lost in the crowd. Even if nobody else knows it yet, you've just stood in a rare spotlight, heard your name, and made a choice. Sometimes, the greatest change starts as a private yes, spoken in the silence or scribbled in a note only you will read. But from here, everything is possible. This is you. This is now. Musk isn't the only one with a future to build. Answer your name before the moment fades. No more silence, no more hesitation. The rest of your story is waiting.